Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Welcome to another exciting episode of Shonen Flop Gaiden, the supplemental series to the podcast Shonen Flop, where we dive even deeper into the little nooks and crannies of the series discussed in Shonen Flop. As always, I am your host, Tucker Whatley, and I'm getting a treat this time because we're covering a series by Ōkubo Atsushi called Ichi. Now, you probably haven't heard of Ichi before you listen to the Shonen Flopcast, but it is a series by the creator of Soul Eater, one of my favorite series, and Fire Force, which is something I'm just getting into. There's a lot of interesting Japanese linguistic stuff going on, as well as references to mythology, the bread and butter of Shonen Flop Gaiden. So let's just dive in. Alright, first order of business is to talk about the title of the series, Ichi. What is up with that? I bet David and Jordan have gone over it in the podcast itself. I record these before the podcasts come out. But the title Ichi is a weird Japanese pun. First of all, it's written B, period, like the English letter B, and Ichi, which is the Japanese word for one. Whenever it's written out, though, it's typically with a really weird kanji that is, well, it also means one, but apparently it's used in formal documents. The Japanese writing system is a nightmare. Truly a nightmare. But, long story short, it's one. It means one. But, if you were to turn that one, Ichi, into the English word one, O-N-E, B, one, B-O-N-E, bone, because the series is all about bones. The main character, he chomps down on bones. So that's where that comes from. Weird fact about it, though, also the title is one of the rare Japanese phrases where a syllable receives 3 beats. I've talked about this a little bit in the past where Japanese works on a rhythm basis rather than a syllable basis. Vowels can be short or long, and typically short ones get 1 beat, long syllables get 2 beats. It works kind of like music, but very rarely things can get 3 beats if it's a contraction or a compound of things, and this is one of those cases where B gets 2 beats, how they pronounce the English letter B, then Ichi, the E there, gets another beat, so you have 3 beats of E, so Ichi. I don't know, it's just a weird thing I thought I would bring up. Oh, also, and it sounds like bitch. I didn't know if you knew that or not, but it kind of sounds like bitch. At the center of Ichi are the Dokeshi. These are the people who are running around having all the supernatural powers, Shonen Jump stuff. The weird thing about them is that Dokeshi in Japanese literally means clown. You can kind of see it in the designs you see of some of the Dokeshi, that they're kind of clown-like. They have a lot of makeup-like features on their face. It seems like a weird thing to name these cool action characters, but it's a weird Japanese play on words where the individual kanji that make up the word Dokeshi suggest the type of powers that these characters have. So you have Do, which means path or road, Ke, which usually it's pronounced Ka, but it's Ke here, means change, and Shi, which means expert or doctor, but it means expert here, someone who practices an art of some sort. So altogether, it literally means something like one who is experienced at changing paths. Which, if you think about a clown, they're always acting like other people, playing parts to make people laugh and such. So it's kind of taking the word for clown and reinterpreting it as someone who has crazy supernatural powers. Speaking of crazy supernatural powers, I actually didn't try to set that segue up, believe it or not. Shotaro is said to have the power of the Kyokotsu, which in the translation they say is crazy bone. And that is true. The individual kanji of Kyokotsu do mean crazy bone or crazy bones. But this is also a reference to Japanese folklore of a scary creature called the Kyokotsu, which is a skeletal old man who would rise from a well to scare people. I don't think it kills anyone or anything. I just think it rises from like wells and like just scares you, as far as I could tell. Like booga booga. I don't know. That's the reference that it's going for. Oh, and as an aside, speaking of kotsu, that kanji, bone, kotsu, is also what is printed on Shotaro's bag of bones. Seems pretty obvious, but just thought I'd point that out. Obviously, Ōkubo didn't have his fill of folklore and mythological references with just the Kyokotsu because Emine, who is the childhood friend / villain / whatever to Shotaro, is known as the Baize. Now, the Baize is a reference to a mythological being of Chinese origin. It is also famous in Japan, where it is called the Hakutaku. There are several different descriptions of it. In Japanese folklore, it's often depicted as a creature that is on all fours, like a cow, that has 9 eyes and 6 horns, and a face like a man. And of course, it's totally white, as the Haku in Hakutaku refers to. Unlike the Kyokotsu, this is not actually a scary creature, despite its description of having all sorts of eyes in all sorts of places and such. This creature apparently is super intelligent and composed a book to an emperor of China of a guide to all 11,520 types of supernatural creatures in the world and how to overcome them. In Japan, it's also thought that the creature eats bad dreams and stuff like that. People would hang pictures of it above entrance gates or somewhere inside the house. I did not get to the part of the manga where they describe Emine as the Baize, but maybe they do that because he's super knowledgeable about Dokeshi stuff or something. I don't know. What is supposed to be scary is the Fear Factory, which is where the bad guys are making all their bad robot weapon stuff. Yeah. Anyway, the cover for the Fear Factory is the Happiness Factory. And actually, this is a bit of a play on words in Japanese because almost everything is, right? Happiness Factory and Fear Factory actually sound pretty close in Japanese. In Japanese, the cover name for the factory was Kofuku Kojo, which is Happiness Factory or Good Fortune Factory, while the real name of it is Kyofu Kojo, which is Terror Factory or Fear Factory. So Kofuku and Kyofu sound pretty similar, so it's a play on words on that. And also, speaking of the factory, they mention, with the whole robot thing is first introduced, they mention that it does the madness dance, which is a combination of all the different types of dances you could possibly think of, and it destroys the factory. It specifically mentions 2 dances that receive no explanation whatsoever in the translation, but you know me, I just cannot let things go. I look everything up, so I figured out what they're most likely references to. They mentioned the Awa Fold, and I'm not totally sure about this, but this is most likely a reference to the Awa Dance Festival, which is a folk dance festival held in the Tokyo area every August during the Obon Summer Festival. and it is the largest dance festival in Japan, attracting over 1.3 million people. And folk dance is a very big deal traditionally in Japanese culture. They also mentioned the Dojo Sukui, which I looked that up, and that is another type of folk dance, and this is specifically called the loach catching dance. It is supposed to mimic the actions of someone trying to catch loaches, which is a type of river fish. Oh, and also as an aside, loach is the origin of the name of the Pokemon Barboach, so that's where that comes from, if you were wondering. Probably not, but now you know. But anyway, imagine that giant-ass robot bending over with like a fake wicker basket used to scoop up river mud and stuff like that in order to catch fish, and like acting like it's catching fish out of a river as it's like destroying this giant factory. That's what they were implying in the original Japanese. Next, I'd like to real quick talk about the martial arts that mana uses in the manga. There are actually a few terms that are used in reference to mana's martial arts that are completely untranslated in this translation of the manga. And I basically had to do a little bit of digging to figure them out. First of all, the name of her martial arts style is Hinoki Ryu. Hinoki means cypress tree in Japanese. And the Ryu, well, the Ryu, I'm not quite sure. It could either mean dragon or it could mean style. So it's either cypress dragon or cypress style martial arts. I'm not quite sure which. Also, near the beginning of the manga, mana uses an attack called Senkyaku Banrai. And I think it insinuates that Mana made up this attack herself, which makes sense because that's not an actual series of words in Japanese. It's completely constructed, but it's constructed as a compound of kanji, and so it's a little bit difficult because I did not have the ability to actually copy and paste this kanji to figure out what the heck was going on with them. But I eventually figured it out, and the closest way I could really translate what it means would be something like rotating legs, bowl of thunder. That bowl part is the one that I'm the least confident about, but I don't know, this kanji, apparently it means things like a tray or a shallow bowl or a platter, or even can refer to phonograph records. I don't know, things that are low in spin, because it's like a low spinning kick, I guess. Also, I'd like to real quick talk about burgers. In one of the early chapters of the manga, Shotaro helps out a kid who runs a burger stall by the side of the street called Gyupa. Now, Gyupa did not get translated in the manga, but I recognize the kanji gyu. It is the kanji for cow or beef, and this is actually the same gyu that is used in the word that is quite popular here in the US now, wagyu. Wagyu is actually a weird thing because it literally in Japanese means domestic beef. The wa refers to Japan, but over here it's generally come to be understood as beef raised in the Japanese style, which is a high level of energy and care in raising the cow, because if you think about it, Japan doesn't have a ton of land to raise cows, so beef is a luxury. So if beef is a luxury, why not just maximize its quality? So that's kind of where the Wagyu philosophy comes from. Oh, but the pa part at the end of Gyupa, I have no idea. It's just the katakana pa. I really have no idea what it's referring to at all. And there we have it, another Shonen Flop Gaiden in the bag. Gotta give myself a pat on the back or something. As always, I have been your erstwhile and insipid? No. Intrepid, yes, that's right. Intrepid host. No trepidations here. Tucker Whatley. And if you are interested in my writing, my previous work on the radio here in Austin, and all sorts of other things I've been up to over the years, you can check out my personal website at tuckerwhatley.com. That's TuckerWhatley.com. And occasionally I will post something here or there on the Twitter, so you can find me at Tucker Whatley, same spelling, all one word, no punctuation. See you, Space Cowboy. As well as references to mythology, you know, the bread and butter of Shonen Flop Gaiden. So let's just dive in and start diving in. I don't know.